When you got the Senior Bowl roster,
Yeah.
who were a couple of players that you circled that you wanted to learn more about?
Yeah, this year's been tough. I mean, we had a couple play. In fact, one of the kids I was probably most excited to see was Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois, and obviously, Chase Brown and Sidney Brown are here, and well represented after a nice season for the Illini and everything. But Witherspoon would have been the highest ranked guy, at least in the defensive backfield down here. And those corners are hard to find, so he was one that I was excited about. Fortunately, he didn't come. He didn't decide to stick with it this week. So probably because his stock is too high. I mean, he's well regarded in the league. And Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech is probably going to be a high pick and a really freaky long guy. I was excited for him. But the biggest one was probably DeJuan Jones from Ohio State. Measured in with an 89-inch wingspan. I mean, I've never heard of such a thing before. I think it's going to set the combine record when he gets there. I mean, he's a massive human being. But he moves really well. He missed yesterday with a little stomach bug, but, I mean, this is a guy with uncommon size and uncommon movement ability for that size. So he's not just a big dude who gets in the way. He can move, and he can kind of harness his power really well. So I wish he was out here yesterday, but he's one that definitely opened my eyes day one.
I'm seeing a lot of Tyjae Spears, the Tulane running back, popping into my timeline.
Oh, man, he's a fun one. He really is. So for people who are, uninitiated to Tyjae Spears, he really didn't take off until about midway through the season. And Tulane was on this, started this incredible streak, and they ended up beating USC in the bowl game. I think Spears finished the year with 8 straight 100 rushing yard games. And just for good measure, the USC game was 200. He had 4 touchdowns. He's not big. He's like, 5'9", 5'10", 204 pounds, but he's got massive quads. He's got incredible balance and quickness. They didn't use him a lot as a receiver there, but he's looked natural catching the ball. I mean, he's probably the one, one of about half a dozen or so players who probably helped himself the most. But again, this also kind of was on the coattails of a unbelievable finish to the season. So yeah, he's definitely put his best foot forward.
Considering how long you've covered the NFL, we talk a lot and have talked a lot this year about how the league has changed when it comes to the quarterbacks. And now dual threat quarterbacks, it's not a dirty word anymore to talk about players as dual threats. Have you seen over the last few years at the Senior Bowl, the coaching even on the defensive side, like, does it play to the idea of that quarterbacking itself has actually changed?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to take a tiny step back, like when the Senior Bowl, I was talking to Jim Nagy, who's the executive director of the Senior Bowl, and he was kind of telling me, I was asking about the quarterback process, because this year's a bunch of mostly day 3 picks and some undrafted guys. It's not a banner group. It's going to be the first year in several where they didn't have a top 100 pick at quarterback down here. But I was kind of asking about the process, and a couple times he made clear that, like, there's almost a preference put towards the dual threat quarterback now. They didn't invite a certain quarterback who will remain nameless, because I was told not to say, but and he's a good, accomplished quarterback. I'm sure you guys know who it is and have watched him. They didn't invite him because he's kind of stiff and doesn't, move around very well. Can he throw the ball? Yeah. Are there other issues? Sure. But yeah, so I definitely think it's had a ripple effect on not only the Senior Bowl and the other All-Star games, but just kind of the team building and draft process to begin with too. And I think it's, like you said, it's no longer considered a stigma. It's not considered something that's held against the guy. Now, people are finally, taking advantage of this stuff, and they realize all the different combinations you could do with it. And it's just the threat of a running quarterback can change how things are played. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's been a massive difference from even, 10 years ago.
What about watching wide receivers one-on-one against corners? Anybody making a name for themselves in those?
The one who probably surprised me the most, I don't know if he's the best down here. I think Rashee Rice from SMU is maybe the cleanest receiver prospect down here off the top of my head. There are other good ones too. I mean, last year we saw Christian Watson, who ended up with the Packers, kind of come in as a day 3 type prospect, perform really well, show off his high point ability and everything. And, I think this year's version is Andre Iosivas, who's a Princeton kid via Hawaii. I mean, he's got a crazy story and, really smart kid, ran track and looks the part. I mean, he is your Christian Watson of this year, I think. So he's certainly helped himself out. But the one who really surprised me the most is Michael Wilson out of Stanford. I truthfully didn't know a whole lot about him. His teammate Elijah Higgins got a little bit more press, I would say, and he's been injured and everything. But, boy, this is a good-looking kid. I mean, 6'2", 200, runs well, catches everything, runs clean routes, gains separation. So of the ones that I, compared to what I thought coming in, I would say he's sort of a riser. But his teammate, Caillou Blue Kelly, whose dad, Brian Kelly, was the Bucks corner during those great, John Lynch, Derek Brooke defenses. His kid is out here and playing well. He had a pick six yesterday. I'd say he's been among the best corners.
We were talking about Luke Getty and him being the head coach, and you were talking about how much fun he's having and having to do this. Why did the Senior Bowl go away from full staffs being, and they've got these blended staffs from different places around the NFL to coach the teams, instead of one staff is going down to Mobile and they'll take one team and the Patriots and Bill Belichick will take the other?
Right. Yeah. So they kind of flipped it this year. And when Nagy talked about it at the opening press conference, for years, for however long the Senior Bowl's been around, 73 or 4 years or whatever, they've always had the full staff. They take the Bears staff or they take the Cardinal staff or whatever, bring them down here and they coach as a unit. They thought, the cohesion of a group, and it was always they would start from the bottom of the standings, and any coaching staff that wasn't fired or, didn't have a head coach or major changes was eligible for the game, and they would just go up the ladder, towards the higher ranked teams and ask, do you want to go? Do you want to go? But this year they gave that honor to, or that benefit, I guess, to the East-West Shrine game. And it's clear that there's now an arms race between the two games. The East-West is trying to get their prospects, and, Senior Bowl's kind of holding on for tradition, and they want to be the premier game and everything. And so, as I understand it, they're going to flip back next year. So the East-West will have the kind of the Frankenstein crew, and these are young up-and-coming coaches who are trying to get their names out there. Many of them minorities, many of them in their, maybe have had college routes they've come from, or, trying to get some exposure. And then the Senior Bowl will get the staffs next year. I don't, nobody's confirmed that for me, but that was the way it was kind of described to me originally.